Hello! Today we're going to be talking about time. When it comes to learning, people tend to fixate on time. In school, you hear things like, "How did you do better than me? I studied like 4 times as much as you." Sometimes it even borders on pride. In graduate school, there is this underlying culture that treats endless hours of studying, ruining your sleep schedule, and having a terrible social life as a badge of honor. I find that idea silly because it violates today's first principle. The quality of all time is not equal. Of course, right? It almost sounds so obvious that I shouldn't even bother mentioning it. And yet, it is astounding how often people say and do things that violate this principle. Someone will say, "I spent 4 hours studying last night." But what does that even mean? What if their idea of studying is rereading the same sentence over and over again, or pretending like they are studying when they are really just listening to music? Using time as your only measurement leaves much to be desired. So, we need to add in some other factors. Throughout this video, our analogy for learning will be going on a road trip. People like to boast about their time, saying the equivalent of, "I drove for 7 hours yesterday." The next important question, though, is, how fast were you actually driving? Your time and your speed combine to give you how far you actually drove. It doesn't make much sense on a real road trip, but some people do the mental equivalent of driving at 1 mile per hour while they are studying. Not very impressive, right? All that time isn't translating into something useful. The learning equivalent of your speed is your mental effort. How hard is your brain actually working? If you have ever really been sinking your teeth into a problem and trying to analyze it from every possible way, you were probably at a high mental effort. There is also that moment when you give up on a hard problem and instantaneously your mental effort goes from 100% to 0%. You can actually feel the difference, and other people can see it if they know what to look for. I'm going to spend more time talking about mental effort in the next video, but for right now, I will introduce you to the principle. Mental effort turns your time into progress. If you have little mental effort when you are learning or studying, you will make little progress. For now, I will just leave you with this takeaway. Figure out how to increase your mental effort. Back to our road trip analogy, we are at least making progress because now we are driving for time and going at a good speed. But there's more to the picture. If you were in charge of the road trip, which of these two paths would you rather follow? You might pick the windy one for a scenic route, but if your goal is to get to where you're going, you will pick the straighter one. For the same amount of driving distance, you actually make it farther. The same thing is true with learning. There are very inefficient, roundabout ways to do things, and there are also much more streamlined ways of learning things. My example from the first video about Spanish pronunciation speaks to this. Here's another one. I'm going to put up a number for 5 seconds. In that time, try to memorize the number. Ready, go. Well, how'd it go? Pretty tricky, right? Memorizing numbers takes mental effort. The longer the number, the more effort, which can be hard to cram into 5 seconds. See if you can still remember any of the first number. Here it is again. Alright, now we're going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to give you a one-word clue before we start. Get ready. Your clue word is mirror. And go. Did you do any better? Probably so. If you go back to the first number I gave you, you will notice it was a similar type of number, where the second half is the reverse of the first half. But the second time, based on the hint, you recognized the pattern and were able to do more with less time. Essentially, I straightened the path for you. Here's the number again. That brings us to the next principle. Your path turns progress into learning. So the advice is similar to before. Take some time to find a straighter learning path to follow. This one is much, much harder for me to help you with. Every category and piece of knowledge has its own path, making it impossible for me to comment on all of them. The best piece of advice I can give you is the principle from the last video. Take the time to learn the underlying principles. That alone will drastically improve your learning. The other advice is to learn from people who are really, really good at what you want to know. They can help you avoid potholes and give you insights that are hard to come by on your own. If you can, get them to help you in person, but reading books, watching YouTube videos, and Googling things can also do you wonders. We have made it all the way from time to learning via mental effort in the straight path. We are most of the way there, but there is one final level. If you are here and your destination is here, which one of these two roads is best to follow? Again, I'm not showing you anything groundbreaking here, but it leads to this question. Why do we bother learning things? What is the point? To echo the vast majority of high school math students, with any piece of knowledge or skill, you can ask the following questions. Why am I learning this? When will I ever use this? I could go my whole life without knowing this and be just fine. And almost every single person who has ever made that comment was right. You can go your entire life without knowing most things and be just fine. So why do we bother learning? I think the reason is to increase our quality of life. There are things you can learn, skills you can acquire, and comfort zones you can grow that end up making your life better. They give you more substance, more open paths, give you more impact, and even give you more passion for life. But of course, there are skills and knowledge that won't make a dent in your quality of life. So, what is the missing link here? Importance is what turns learning into quality of life. Doing important things is hard. We all tend to shy away from the one thing we know we should be doing, and we tend to hide from it in plain sight by busying ourselves away with other tasks. My house normally gets significantly cleaner in the days before a big test because I would rather be doing anything other than the one thing I need to. Importance is also hard to nail down because we can delude ourselves into thinking something is more important than it really is. To loosely quote my favorite book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, you don't want to climb the ladder of success and reach the top only to figure out it was leaning against the wrong wall. Let's put the whole equation together. We start with the amount of time we invested in something. Then we multiply it by our mental effort, which I always think of as going from 0 to 100%. We take that and multiply it by the straightness of our path, which for simplicity's sake you can also think of as 0 to 100%. Lastly, we multiply that by the importance of what we spent our time in, and that gives us a change in our quality of life. You can probably start to see why it is so incredibly hard to improve our quality of life. Mental effort, straightness, and importance stop at 100%, which means they are only really capable of decreasing the usefulness of your time. You might also remember from elementary school math that when you multiply a bunch of numbers together, if any one of them is 0, then the whole thing will equal 0. That's terrible for us, because we have 4 different potential points of failure. But now that this whole system has been made clear, you can start figuring out where the weak link is and focus on it directly. Personally, I fail with importance more often than anything. One of my most recent failures is what I will now call the Dvorak Incident. You know how the normal keyboard starts out with QWERTY? Well, someone named Dvorak made a different keyboard layout that is supposed to be much more efficient, fast, and good for your wrists. I learned about it and thought, I should totally learn that. That will make my life so much better. All in all, I probably spent over 100 hours practicing typing on the new keyboard layout, only to get up to about 80% of my original typing speed and then give up because I finally decided it wasn't worth it. I've even tried a couple times since to pick it back up, but I get a couple hours in and just think, why am I even doing this? I have to remind myself often that just because I'm learning something does not make it important. Here are the principles all together. If you put in 0 time towards some area of your life, but you want it to improve, you will have to find some time out of your schedule to make it work. If you already put in time but aren't seeing results, rather than dedicating more time since life is crazy, figure out how to take that time and make it more worthwhile by increasing your mental effort and the straightness of your path. And if you have been successfully learning a lot, but it isn't translating to your life, take a good hard look at your priorities and see if there is a better way to spend your time. The best results come from success in all 4 areas simultaneously, which is really, really hard, but possible. Your homework is some self-reflection. For each of the 4 components, find an area of your life where that component was the weakest link. So, find something where you put in no time, something where you put in plenty of time but no mental effort, and so on. In the next video, we are going to take a deeper dive into what exactly mental effort is and how you can increase it.